So how many people actually achieve their dreams? This is going to shock you. It has been reported that less than 10% of people actually achieve what they set out to do. And this is a time of year when we're all making, annual goals and my to-do list for 2025, what I want to achieve. Less than 10% of people achieve what they set out to do in the very beginning of the year. Well, how can this be? Everyone talks about goals and plans for 2025. What goes wrong? Well, I want you and me to be a part of that 10% that does achieve their goals. And we're going to talk about how to close that gap between where you are and where you want to be. That's what this video is all about. And before you do that though, I want to introduce myself. I'm Sharri Harmel, and I would like to invite you to subscribe. If you haven't already, click the like button and leave a comment if you want to. And if you don't know what to say, just say, I want a fab next chapter. That's what this is all about. Now, why do I call this a next chapter? That sounds odd to some people. Well, the story of your life is actually like a book, right? You start up, it's a book actually that's made up of many different chapters. You start out as a child, and then you're a teenager, and then you're a young adult, and then you're a professional, and then you're getting married, getting partnered, having children, whatever it is, it goes on and on and on. Well, in this podcast, we focus on the next chapter after you've raised the kids, after you've done the long career, whatever that might have been. It might be after the marriage has ended, whether it was divorce or the passing of your partner. We talk through all those very hard events that happen in our lives that we work through. When you get to be my age, you've had a lot of them, right? But we work through them. And this podcast is all about how to make your next chapter, fantastic. Maybe your best chapter, maybe the most creative chapter that you've ever had. And if that sounds like you, I want to welcome you. Now, let's get back to goals and dreams. In my book, Design Your Fabulous Next Chapter, I outline a 7-step framework that I created to help you to design and live your own fabulous next chapter. Today, we're going to talk about one of those steps, just one of those steps, which is closing the gap. And closing the gap is about identifying what you want, and we're going to assume that you know what that is, and then getting really honest and talk about where you are today. So we're going to first jump into what some of mine are like for the next year. I'm going to give you a little preview. This is where I want to be for the next year. And excuse my very bad drawings. An artist I am not, which you will see. Lose more weight. I've been on a really good program, and I want to continue that. Get more fit. I want to be strong. I want to feel really good and flexible. I want to travel somewhere where I've never been. Here's my little airplane. I'm going to be traveling solo, most likely, but I want to go someplace where I've never been. And then I want to clear my home of things I don't need. I recently moved into what I call my forever home, and I'm telling you, there is stuff everywhere because now everything is coming together. All those storage units, all the closets, I have emptied it all, and it is sitting in my apartment. So we're going to talk about that. But I just want to mention something to you, and that is, why do we write down our goals? Why is it important that we write down our goals? I'm going to share a statistic with you that is going to shock you, actually. And that is that less than 3% of Americans write down their goals. Now, I'm hoping all of you non-Americans are much better at this, but only 3% of Americans write down their goals. Now, does that matter? So what? I don't write down my goals, you might be thinking. Well, there is a 96% chance you won't achieve your goals if you don't write them down. That's amazing. So, we got to write down our goals. So I'm going to assume that you did that, okay? That's obviously, we've now figured out that writing down our goals is super important. So I'm going to assume you all did that, just like I did. These are my goals for 2025. Part of my next chapter is 2025, okay? So now it's time to get honest. And honesty is tough, but in the privacy of our own home, we can be incredibly honest. And you might say, why do you have to identify where you are? Why does that matter? Can't I just write down the goals and then figure out little steps as to how I'm going to make those goals happen? Well, it's sort of like ordering an Uber for any of you who do that. You know where you want to go, but you have to tell them where you are for them to figure out what your trip is, for them to pick you up, for them to get you to where it is that you want to be. So just like your Uber, you have to, in your whole goal chart, you have to also identify where you are today, and then you can figure out how are you going to get there. So let's take a look at mine. And like I said, I'm being super honest here. Okay, here's where I want to be: lose weight, get more fit, travel to a new place solo, someplace I've never been, clear my home of unwanted stuff, things I don't need anymore. But this is where I am. I have at least 20 more pounds to lose. That's my first goal, and I think it's something that's manageable in 2025. I don't feel fit or strong. I really don't. I work out with a trainer once a week for 30 minutes at a time, do strength training. It needs to get upped. And I say that because I just don't feel as fit as I want to feel. And how you feel is really important. That is your most important yardstick in any of this, is how do I feel? Now, traveling to a new place solo, I have a friend whose son is having a destination wedding in Florence, Italy in September. Now, Florence, Italy is not a direct flight from Boston, as an example. If I'm in Europe, it is, but not in Boston. So it's a little bit more difficult to get to Florence, Italy, than say I was going to Rome or I was going to Venice or whatever the case may be. So I'm nervous about this. Last, I said I want to clear my home of unneeded stuff. I have stuff coming out everywhere. You can't imagine. If any of you ever watch Keeping Up Appearances and you get to know Mrs. Bouquet or Mrs. Bucket, I'm starting to feel like her because I have more china. I have china as though I was a professional entertainer, and I'm not. So I have to clear my home of stuff. Books are another problem. How many books do we buy that we don't read or that we start and we don't finish? That's all here, okay? So pictures. I've had multiple homes. I have traveled to so many places. I buy pictures all the time. And I never have enough wall space for those pictures. So this is where I am, okay? There's no doubt about it that something has to change. So, and you can see there's quite a gap here, right? Quite a gap between where I am right now and where I want to go. So how do I get from, say, here to here, okay? Let's take just that particular goal and kind of break it down because I think it's important. So I've got the goals, talks about stuff everywhere: books, china, pictures, clothes. I'm going to choose to focus on one thing. You can see all of this. I can't tackle it all, and that's super important that you recognize you can't tackle it all. I hone in on clothing, because that's the first thing I can deal with. And within clothing, I've got coats, I got shoes, and I got all kinds of outfits and undergarments, okay? I said, I'm going to put clothing aside, I'm going to put shoes aside, and I'm going to focus in on outfits. And outfits is sweaters and skirts and dresses and undergarments, all of that, all of the things that are in the drawers and the closets, okay? So what am I going to do? I have to come up with a process. And the process that I came up with is three piles, right? 3 piles. We all know them. Toss, you like my little drawing? Maybe, and yes. And that's how neat I want my closet to look when I'm all done, okay? Now, remember that the action steps that you come up with to get to this process they have to be small. They have to be small enough and doable enough that you don't quit. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. So you also have to accept, honestly, that it's probably going to be hard in the beginning, or it's going to be really messy. I had to accept that my apartment was going to be filled with clothes, like everywhere, for several weeks as I worked through this little process that I had created for myself. Now, the toss pile is pretty easy, right? You pick things up. I'm like, yeah, no, I'm not going to wear that. Toss. So my toss pile was easy. The yes pile is also easy, because my yes pile is really clothes that I wear all the time. Clothes that, are at the front of the closet, at the front of your dresser, that you grab when you have the book club, when you have lunch, when you just want to go shopping or you want to go for a walk or whatever. These are the things you wear all the time, and you're very comfortable wearing them. So we got the toss piles easy, the yes pile's easy, but this maybe pile in the middle is sometimes can feel insurmountable. Do I put it over here in the toss pile, or do I put it in a yes pile? How do I work through that maybe pile? And everybody's got a maybe. It may not be clothes we're talking about. It might be something else entirely. Let's say if your goal is to clear out all of your storage areas within your house, you will have a huge maybe area. So the next step is you have to come up with, what are you going to do about the maybe? How are you going to deal with the maybe? And in that maybe pile, because mine was all about clothes, I had so many pants, you can't imagine, where they'd be great pants, or so I thought, if I lost weight. I don't know how many of you can relate to that. I think I've dragged those pants all around the world for almost a decade, hoping I would lose weight and then I would wear those pants. I mean, it took up probably, at least 2 feet, if not an entire 36 inches in my closet of these pants, okay? So the first thing is, if it doesn't fit me today and I have been waiting to wear it for a very long time, go put it in the toss pile. And I'll talk about how you can kind of check that a little bit. In another part of the maybe pile also is clothing you have for that special event when it happens. There's nothing like hope, right? That sequin skirt with the beautiful blouse that you're going to wear to the New Year's celebration that you're going to get invited to one of these years. We all have them. The low-cut, sexy dress we're going to wear when someone invites us to the Ritz for our birthdays, right? Someone special. Get rid of it. I say that because it just doesn't do your sense of hope and your confidence and your joy any good by looking at outfits you're saving for somebody to walk into your life that is going to give you the opportunity to wear those clothes. So if you don't wear them by yourself, taking yourself to the Ritz or taking yourself to a beautiful New Year's event, get rid of it. You don't have space at this point in your life for this someday, maybe, whatever, okay? Now, another one is I spent so much money on this, I should keep it, because even though I never wear it, I spent all that money, and so consequently, it's something that I must have. You have to be ruthless. You have to be courageous. I don't know how else to put it. And the first thing, if you're questioning whether or not you keep that sequin skirt, or you keep that St. John jacket, or the Gucci whatever, I highly suggest you go get a full-length mirror. And this was a rude awakening for me, because I've lived in very small homes or apartments and just never had full-length mirrors. And I still do, but I have an apartment now with a full-length mirror, which is really interesting, because I have noticed that what I think looks good on in my bathroom mirror, like I get all dressed up, I look in the mirror and I'm like, oh yes, go girl, you look fantastic. If I go and walk and take a look at myself in the full-length mirror, I'm like, no, this does not look good, girl. Maybe it's the shoes that are bad, but it might be the cut of the jacket, or the skirt looks like it's from another decade. You're aging yourself, or the neck is so high that it looks like my head is resting on my shoulders. You know, all of that you can't see in the bathroom mirror. You really can't. You can't see in a mirror that's only showing you from the waist up. You have to see the whole picture. So I share this because I had a St. John's jacket, blazer, top, or whatever you want to call it. And I've had this, honest to God, for probably over a decade. I love the darn thing. I love it on the hanger. I spent a good bit of money on it, but mostly it's because it was this fantastic brand that I liked at the time that I bought it, and I got a really good price for it. So I don't want to give it up, right? Okay. I put that jacket on in a full-length mirror. I tried it with pants, I tried it with a skirt, I tried it over a dress. It looked terrible. No matter what I did with that jacket, it was not attractive. And I finally came to terms with the acceptance that I could lose 50 pounds and this jacket is still not going to look good on me. So that goes in my toss pile. So if you're working on clothes, get yourself a full-length mirror, and that will help you significantly figure out what's going to go out of that maybe pile into the yes or into the toss. Now, if you're still questioning, you're like, oh, this looks pretty good, but I don't know. I don't know if I want to wear this. Start wearing it. Force yourself to wear everything that's still left in your maybe pile out and about. You know, when we wear things, clothing matters to us. It really matters to our self-image. It matters to our self-confidence. It's how we feel about life, everything. So when you put something on, you will get, and you're out and about, not in your house, but out and about, you will get an instant message whether or not that clothing makes you feel good about yourself. Truly, it will. So go through that process, and that might take you weeks. You might have a whole lot in that maybe pile that takes actually weeks for you to get through and to try. Now, let's say you're not tackling the clothing part of all your stuff, if we want to call it that, and instead it's books or it's pictures, whatever. There's china, right? Books. Make your same pile. Your toss, your keep, your maybes. And in your maybes, start to reread them. Reread some of those books and see if they still inspire you to the point that you want to keep them. You want the space, because everything in your maybe pile that goes over to your yes pile is going to take up space. These are things. These are not, ambiguous things out there that take up no space, like feelings or qualities or whatever. These are things, literally things, and they take up space, and we have to decide if we want to use the space we have. Now, it might be that it's pictures. You're like me, and you've collected pictures all over the place in the world, and you have more pictures than you have wall space. Put them up. Maybe don't put a hole in the wall, but start to put them up around you and start to ask yourself, how do I feel when I look at that picture? Keep talking about feelings. Feelings are super important, and we often overlook feelings. We think it has to be a perfect aesthetic, or it goes just right with the decor of my apartment. But the real question is, how does that picture make me feel? Okay? China, start to use it. Ask yourself, would I ever use this set of 12 that's got more serving dishes than I would ever make in a luncheon? Does this fit with my lifestyle? Do I do lunches? Do I do full dinners? Whatever it is. This whole process of trying things on is a concept, and actually I talk about it in the book about trying on clothes, because it's a concept that really will help you to figure out what you want in your next chapter and what needs to go. Because when you start out, and my book actually will help you go through this process. When you start out and you're creating your dreams, you got a whole bunch of ideas. And then you have to figure out, do I toss some of those ideas? Are some of those a yes and I need to go the next step? Are some of these a maybe? And you have to try things on, your ideas for your next chapter, just as I'm showing you how I had to try on clothes in order to clean down, to get down to the real important ingredients of my wardrobe. You have to do that to figure out what is the real important ingredients that you want in the next chapter of your life. You have to figure out what sticks, what you love, what brings you joy, what you see yourself being able to do on a regular basis. Now, you might ask, does trying something on actually work? Does this really work? Especially if we get into the concept of our next chapter. Well, yes, it does, believe it or not, because at the foundation of designing your next chapter are your feelings. And the only way you can assess whether or not what you want in your next chapter is right for you to pursue to the next level is to try it on. Everything looks good on paper. People sell actually like 2025 create your dream life journals or whatever. I'm just making stuff up here. But they sell all kinds of ways for you to write down what it is that you want. And in the book, I actually talk about vision boards, because vision boards are a very big part of this. And I talk about how the process to go through vision boarding so that it really hones into what it is that you truly, truly want and connects you to feelings. Because feelings are often what are overlooked when you get into goal setting. It becomes, even we all come from, to some extent, I should say, a business model of goal setting. And in goal setting, rarely does anyone say, how does this feel? Does this feel like something we can achieve? It's a rare company that says, who are our customers and who are our stakeholders and how will these goals make them feel? On a side note, the only one I've ever heard is the CEO of Delta Airlines, who does a masterclass. And in that masterclass, he talks about who do we serve as Delta Airlines? It's the employees and the people who fly the airplanes. And how do we take care of those people? Really interesting. Do the same thing with yourself. How do these goals make me feel? And that means I got to try them on. I got to try on some of this. So let's go back, though, to this toss pile just for a minute. And the toss pile, it's like, what am I going to do with all that stuff? Right? My pile, I can't tell you, I had piles, not one pile. That looks neat compared to what was going on in my apartment. multiple piles. So the first thing I did was ask the woman who cleans my building, the hallways in my building, whether or not she wanted anything. So she went through everything. Then I explored drop-off centers and women's shelters and, those back to work organizations for women, because I had more darn professional blouses than I will wear, in the rest of my life. Crazy. I don't wear those kinds of clothes anymore. And once we retire, those of you who are on the brink of retirement or thinking of retirement, we will dress different when we retire than how we did when we worked. Now, maybe that's changed a little bit since COVID, but I had to get to that point of really asking myself, do these outfits, do these clothes actually, or does this blouse, does this skirt, does this blazer actually fit the lifestyle I have today? I checked out some consignment shops, which opens up a whole new can of worms, so to speak. And finally, I live in the Back Bay of Boston, and I'm telling you, if you put a bag of anything good outside the night before garbage day, they will be gone. I don't know where all that stuff goes, but it goes. So let's just talk about this process. And I'm going to lay this out for you just to summarize. We have now come to the end of my little my little chart here. So number 1, make the steps doable. If you want to close the gap between where you are today and where you want to go, you have to come up with steps. But those steps have to be realistic and the steps have to be doable. If they're too hard, you'll quit. You really will. Think about it. If you want to run a 10K at some point by the, say, June or whatever it might be, maybe halfway through the year before the fall ends. If you go out tomorrow and try to run, and you haven't been a runner up till now, and you go out tomorrow and you say, I'm going to run 2 miles tomorrow, or I'm going to run 3 miles, whatever it might be, you won't be able to get out of bed the next day. You will be so sore. And by the time you recover from, stretching yourself too much that first day, you'll almost have to revamp that entire goal. And you're going to have to work on yourself to get excited about that goal again. So that is why, that's a perfect example of why we have to start with reasonable and doable. Another is accept that it's going to be hard at first. In my case, because I was dealing with clothes, I had to accept that my apartment was going to be a mess for maybe weeks, because I can't do it all in one weekend. And honestly, if I told myself, gosh, Sharri, you have to do this weekend, I probably wouldn't have done it. And that brings me to the comment about procrastination. Yes, so set up parameters. I'm in my case also, I'll share, I made the decision to not do the china, not do the books, not do the pictures, focus in on the clothes. And then I went down another level and I said, within the clothes, I'm only going to deal with clothing. I'm not going to deal with coats. I'm not going to deal with shoes. Okay? So last, I had to set parameters. I actually set times that I would do this. I can get so easily distracted. I'm like every one of you probably. I turn on a YouTube video or a podcast when I'm going through the clothes or whatever, and suddenly I'm off. I want to explore that idea or this idea. Or there's something else in the room that is, taking up my space, my time, my thoughts, and then I'm off, So set parameters. And it was, for me, it was like, I'm going to put in my calendar, I'm going to work at this for 2 hours. I also said to myself, I'm going to really stick to my process, okay? I'm not going to give up the toss, the maybe, the yes pile process until I'm through it. I'm going to take myself through that maybe pile. I'm going to wear those clothes. I'm committing to a process, a very simple process, but a process that I can commit to. And I have to say, after all of this, that my closets can finally breathe. There is actually space in my closet. There is empty hangers in my closet. I love it. Now, what can get in the way of you closing the gap between where you are right now and where you want to go? And the first thing I want to mention is negative thinking. Your mindset truly is paramount to you reaching your goals. What do I mean when I say mindset, right? It's negative thinking, but it's also, buying into negative stories that you have told yourself. So if I have said, as an example, I'm a clothes hoarder. I just need one more storage unit, okay? I wouldn't have taken myself through this process. I actually said, Sharri, no more. You don't need any more clothes. And when you get to my age, you start to think about things like, oh my God, what are my children going to see when I'm gone? So I said, no more storage units, no more of this. I'm not saving clothes for someday anymore. So I didn't let myself buy into that old mentality that I just needed more storage. I love clothes, so I can't have enough clothes or whatever. So some of those negative stories that you tell yourself that you buy into can also be part of that negative mindset. Another roadblock, and I briefly mentioned that here, to closing that gap, is procrastinating. And if you don't make the steps doable, small enough, manageable, something that kind of excites you, you will put off doing the work. You truly will. And if you're talking about your next chapter, if that goal or that dream is so big and you don't break it down into small steps that you can try on, you will never ever go for it. You won't, because it's too big. It's too big, and it will. You don't even know where to start because it's so big. Procrastinating also sometimes is about not doing the hard thing, not being uncomfortable. And truly, to create what we want in our next chapters takes work. Think about all the other chapters in your life where you had significant milestones, raising the kids. Gosh, when they're babies, I look at my grandkids and I feel so sorry for my daughter. She has no time for herself. It wasn't easy when we had little ones. It wasn't easy when we first went off to college. It wasn't. It wasn't easy when we started our careers. Same thing. It's not going to be easy. But accept, just like in the past, and your history is a great barometer that can really fuel you to move forward. You know that even though it was hard and you put in the work, the reward was fantastic. But what's important is you got to do small things at a time. You can't take on something or think you're going to take on something that's so huge because you won't do it. So make that that's a super important step. Really accept that you're going to create baby steps. I don't know how else to put it. And when I talk about it being hard, I think about my first goal, which is to lose more weight and 20 pounds. And truly, if it was easy to lose weight and it was easy to get fit, I'd be both those things now. I have not put in the work up till now. If it was easy to travel solo someplace, I wouldn't be worried about Florence, Italy in September to support my friend when her son gets married. If it was easy to get rid of all the unnecessary stuff in my house, I wouldn't have ended up with 3 storage units. I wouldn't end up with closets that if you open the door, the stuff just comes out, right? So closing the gap between where you are today and where you want to be is going to take some work. But I'm telling you, it's absolutely amazing. Amazing when you get there. And one last thing to think about, one last piece of advice to think about, and it's probably the most important of everything, is to pay attention to who you spend time with. You know, each and every one of us only has 120 hours in a week. Elon Musk has the same number of hours a week as I do. Doesn't matter. You can't buy more hours. If you're really rich, you don't get more time. You really don't. If you're poor, you don't get less time. We all have 120 hours a week. So who are we spending our time with? How are we spending our time? Because most of our time is spent with other people. You know, surround yourself with like-minded people. Surround yourself with people, you know, at least have some people in your life who are as committed to creating fabulous next chapters as you are. You know, and it may not be people who are your age. One of our subscribers, and Gladys, you comment all the time. I absolutely love it. You know, Gladys, I think, is in her late 60s, and she commented that most of her friends, or she really has a core group of friends that motivate her and inspire her and keep her going, that are decades younger than her. So Gladys has found people who can support her regardless of what age they are. So it may be that what you want to do, there are not a lot of people of your age group who are interested in doing the same thing. Branch out, reach out. Now, family is great. I love family. Family's super important, but often family can't see you beyond what you've always been. And you're switching things up here. You're changing what might have always been. You're designing a new chapter of your life, right? So expand your network and surround yourself. I encourage you to surround yourself with people who are also excited to design and live their fabulous next chapters, regardless of their ages. I want to thank you for joining me today. And if you want to move forward on your next chapter, my book is available on Amazon. And I want to encourage you to go to my website, sharriharmel.com, and download the free workbook that goes with the book. It actually will help you to move forward or move through the 7 steps to design and then live your fabulous next chapter. Thank you, everyone, and take care. Bye for now.